What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Wisconsin Sportsman podcast, which is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear. I'm your host, Pierce Nellis, and this is your home for all things hunting, fishing, and conservation in the Badger State. Folks, I hope you're all doing well. As we kind of talked about last week, that fall spring sure as hell didn't last. I'm a little bummed because we just got a couple inches of snow down here right after I was trout fishing yesterday, and trying to maximize the little bit of warm weather that we had there. Found some happy fish. Yesterday they were not happy, but I was also kind of trying to force feed them streamers when maybe I shouldn't have, and ended up finally caving in and snagging a couple with midges. And I don't know, beat the skunk at least. So I'm happy about that. But a little bummed because this afternoon I had plans to actually do some postseason scouting, and now we got snow on the ground. So I think what little chance I already had of maybe finding a shed, or what really good chance I had of definitely not finding a shed, has just become more of a guarantee now. And so I've come to terms with that, but I'm hoping I can find more and answer a couple more questions on a couple of these pieces. One of which you'll see, I would imagine, in the next week or two with Derek Malcor. If you haven't been following along with the Dropping Pins scouting series with him over at the Okayest Hunter YouTube channel, those have been awesome. He dropped the one with Brian Dombrowski and also the one with Tony Van Asten. As I record this, he dropped that just yesterday, and both of those are freaking awesome. I think me and Derek's episode should come out in the next week or two. So I'm super fired up for that. It was, again, just an awesome day, super cool terrain, and found some pretty cool stuff. But before we dive into this episode, you guys, one last announcement here. Let me find it. Should have been more prepared here. Sorry, guys. It's early. It's not early as we record. This is 10:15. But the BHA Intro to Western Hunting event is going to be going on March 7th at the Vortex headquarters. If you haven't yet, go check out the Wisconsin BHA events page. Make a trip on down to Barneveld and check out the Vortex headquarters because it's freaking sweet. That's going to be an awesome event. I'm super excited for that. But we're not here to talk about Western hunting or hunting at all today. We're kind of in this weird transition stage of like ice out. I've seen a bunch of pictures of shanties and trucks busted through the ice, but it's not quite warm enough to actually be open water season. So it's like both parties, like if you're more attuned to one over the other, it seems like nobody's really happy right now. Everybody's just kind of like chomping at the bit for it to either freeze back up or open all the way up so we can all have some fun here. But I've got Matthew Mendini here with the onX Fish team. Matt, how we doing today?
Not bad, Pierce. How about you, man?
Excellent, dude. Like I said, a little frustrated about this weather and the transition stage, but working with what we got.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It feels like one of those things where you either got to drive south to get to open water or you got to drive north to get to the good solid ice right now. If you're in that like weird little middle belt that I think we both are in, it's kind of what that weird, like you said, that weird middle stage we're just kind of waiting to get out of.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's like, I don't know. I've seen guys on some of the bigger water, like we were just talking about the Mississippi. I've seen guys out there already getting into some walleyes, but I drove over it the other day and like you need an ice barge, it looks like, at least with the amount of, whether it be the shelf ice that's still there or the massive chunks of ice that are just kind of like slowly floating down. I don't know. Guy Alan, who I was just talking about there, he's a go-getter for sure. I'm not sure what his hull consists of on his boat, but more power to him. He's I guess he goes more below dams and stuff, so it should be pretty broken up down there. It's more main channel stuff that's still got the slush on it, I guess.
Yeah, not the most friendly for us shore anglers either. You know, if you're trying to attack it from the
Right.
banks, like you said, still a little bit of ice there. So still waiting for the ice off on the rivers as well.
Yeah, exactly, dude. And so I don't know. I'm sure you've seen those videos of the guys who like strap on the ice cleats and they just like ride a chunk of ice down the river and like nope.
You know, if you want to go viral, it's a good way, right? You know,
Yep.
it's easy
Yeah,
to
right?
go viral that way.
I'd be curious, yeah, how far are they actually doing that? Are they just doing that for the gram, or are they actually, doing a couple mile float on that little chunk of ice?
I'd be impressed.
Yeah, right. But well, dude, I'm stoked to be chatting with you today because we talked with Eric Johnson from the Trout Routes team, one of the OGs of that little program, just like you are. But you've got a new project that you're working on, and onX has been kind of working on this new project in the fishing realm, which has been pretty freaking sweet from what I've gotten to play with so far. But dude, before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, kind of where you're from, and how you got to where you're at with onX Fish?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'll try to be quick about it. Grew up in Wisconsin, Midwest through and through. Currently live in Minnesota, so we'll get there. We'll figure out how we got there quickly. So went to school in Chicago. Was working in the craft beer industry. I think Eric might have talked a little bit about that as well. He kind of came through
Hmm.
that same path. But the craft beer industry took me from Chicago to Colorado during COVID. Had to get out of Chicago during that time period for sure. And from there, my now wife's stepbrother put a fly rod in my hand and was like, if you're going to experience the West, you got to have a fly rod in your hand. And with that, I was using trout routes to find some public access, find new water, things like that. And the job opportunity popped up with trout routes to join the team on the marketing side of the house, same side Eric was on. So we got to work super closely in those early days of trout routes alongside Zach Pope and the other side, product side of the house. It was a cool core team that we had. And yeah, I mean, a couple years ago, came to onX through that acquisition. And then not this past December, but the year before that, the onX Fish crew was like, "Hey, Matt, you want to come out to the St. Paul Ice Fishing Show?" I joined them to kind of walk around, just check it out, and they were like, what do you think about coming on and splitting your time on the marketing team for onX Fish as kind of things were getting launched? Wisconsin and Minnesota had been launched at that point, but was super excited to join the team, kind of a new challenge. So for the last year or so, actually, I've been splitting my time between both the Trout Routes team still, as well as the Fish team. Soon we'll be transitioning over to the Fish team full time. Super excited as we continue to grow that product, wrap up the Midwest states here this year, and then figure out what region we're going to tackle next. So, but super excited to be a part of the onX Fish team now, and excited to talk about it today. Like you said, there's a lot of cool things that are coming down the pike as well. So I'm excited to be able to shed a little light on some of the things that we've got cooking for 2026 here too. If people haven't already played around with it, I definitely recommend they do. So.
Yeah, dude, that's in my limited experience with it thus far. Now, I can't say even limited, but it made it limited by how intuitive it was to use. Because I'm haven't done a Northwoods trip in years, and we just booked. We're going to go for like a long weekend, I think. But back in high school and stuff, we used to do like a father-son trip with me and my dad and a couple of my buddies and their dads every summer. And then college hit, and we were all kind of spread out, and schedules got crazy and whatnot. So we haven't done it for like 10 years now, and now we're finally going to reboot that. And as soon as we got the lake picked out, I hopped on onX Fish, and it was just game over. Like I have a game plan in place. I'm not stressing about it whatsoever. And we'll get into the features and everything like that, shortly here. But it's a freaking sweet program, and it's like just as intuitive as onX Hunt. Like it's got all the same, just easy features to use and stuff like that, man. So we'll dive into that. Before we do that, though, I'm curious. You mentioned being out in Colorado and spending time out there, cutting your teeth as a fly angler out there and a trout angler. I'm curious because Colorado was also my first, not to the extent that I'm sure it was for you, but that was my first fly fishing trip ever. Was like me and my buddy both finally bought fly rods, and we're like, well, Colorado is the place to go trout fish, apparently, according to the internet. And his sister happened to live in Denver at the time, so we went out there and kind of like we were talking about off air, figured out pretty quickly, got to drive like a minimum of an hour to get to anything worth fishing. But I'm curious, which do you prefer now that you've come back to the Midwest? And I'm sure you've done some trout fishing around southeast Minnesota and the upper portions of the driftless region and maybe even northern Wisconsin, stuff like that. Do you have a
Oh,
side you want to lean into?
putting me on the spot, man. That's tough. I mean, I think I reminisce back on the days in Colorado, and there's times where I wish I had done more of the warm water fishing opportunities that are available in Denver. I mean,
Mm.
Eric just a couple weekends ago when he was out in Denver got got a night carp fish
Yeah, right.
fishing, and so that looked like a lot of fun. And I was like, maybe I was missing out on some of that stuff. But yeah, otherwise it was driving in an hour, which at this point here, living in Minnesota now, I can bike 10 minutes to the Mississippi and be fishing for smallmouth, or I can take a 45-minute drive over to Wisconsin and be in the driftless region in the heart of it and just having a time on trout. And so I think my heart lies here probably. I mean, I think in the Midwest, growing up in the Midwest, I get back to Sheboygan where I grew up fairly often and get to do some of that lake run stuff. I mean, I caught a lake run brown a couple Christmas Eves ago that I was like, this is the only Christmas present I need for this year, and still think about that fish often. So I think when I look at it, I would if I had to pick one place at the end of the day, it would be in a smallmouth river here in the Midwest for sure.
Dude, I love that you just abandoned trout there and attacked the smallies. That's
Oh
I
yeah.
dude, yeah, there's something that folks listening, if you haven't experienced it, you really should, because there's something like it's almost like romantic about those Northwoods Smalley rivers. Like you catch them on a good day, it's so quiet, it's so peaceful, like arguably even more peaceful than some of the trout streams are. Because you don't have like I mean, everybody likes the rushing water and the riffle heads and the bend pools and all the stuff you see in a trout stream. But there's something about big old boulders and gravel flats and fallen cedars and stuff like that and that tan stained water that if you catch it
Oh,
on the right day, dude, it's magic.
yeah. And there's always the opportunity to run into a muskie or two, which can't ever hurt, right?
Exact, dude. That's I haven't officially said that on the show yet, but that is my goal for the year is to actually lay into a muskie and give it an honest effort. And
There we
on
go.
that father son trip, I will be 10 weight in hand for most of the trip while everybody probably laughs at me until they don't, hopefully. But we'll
I
see.
like it. I like it. There we
We'll
go,
see.
man. I'll send you
Oh,
this bad boy.
hell yeah. There you go. Yeah. Have you been
That's an
tying?
Eric tie, actually. No, this is an Eric tie, man. I gotta I
Okay.
gotta give him credit for it. It's an Eric tie that I've had sitting on my desk here for too long. It hasn't seen water in too long.
That's a beauty, dude. I literally had like, I think the day or 2 days after he and I recorded, I was like, "Hey, I'm committing to muskie this year. I might need a bug or 2 from you." And he was like, "For sure. You just let me know." So
Oh yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
that's good to see one firsthand there. I like it. I like it. But dude, onX, as we said, the onX fish is the newest conglomerate to the onX family, or the newest addition, right? Can you give us a little bit of a rundown? You mentioned that it's only here in the Midwest thus far, and it started in Minnesota and Wisconsin. I know they just added Iowa, like, I mean, a week or two ago, right? But can you give us a little bit of a rundown on kind of just what onX Fish is, how it works, kind of how and why it got its start here in the Midwest?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think we can specifically kind of start with, for those of your listeners who are now familiar with trout routes fairly well after the
Mhm.
conversation with Eric, we can start there of just like the differentiation and why are there two fishing products within the onX Maps ecosystem, right? And the reason is that they serve two different anglers, two different kind of types of anglers. And so the onX Fish product, whereas trout routes is really focused on moving trout water, the onX Fish product is really focused on your conventional lake angler and the multi-species angler. Honestly, of course, you can dive in to a single species, but it's really going to help anglers understand and be able to digest a lot of that species data, stocking data, depending on what state you're in. Some states lean into uh, species data heavier, whereas Michigan, we found out, leans into their stocking data a lot more than they do some of that survey species data. Um, so that's kind of the big differentiation there, man. I mean, I think for a lot of anglers, it's a starting place. It's a planning tool to be able to, understand. All right, do I want to have a day where I'm just catching a lot of fish, or do I want to maybe target some of the biggest fish in the region, or do I want to bring some fish home and be able to fry them up with the family? So it's really a great place to start your planning, figure out those lakes you want to target, and then for those of your listeners who are familiar with the onX ecosystem already, hunt is really built around, and all of the other verticals are built around helping people find access and get outdoors. And so being able to find those access points on those new lakes that you might not be familiar with, maybe some of those sneaky access points on some public land easements, things like that that people aren't using on what might be considered a private lake, where you can find some of that sneaky access, things like that. That's some of the big use cases, and where I think fish really stands out. And right now we're building it out. We've got 10 of those Midwest states covered. As I mentioned, we've got a couple more coming here in the next few months. And then we'll be branching out of the Midwest as well with an exciting one. That our onX, I think, family and users will be very excited about, bringing it home there to the home state here soon. So.
Sweet. Dude, that's awesome, man. I love what you keyed in on there about how it's all about just helping people find access. It's not necessarily giving anything away. I'm curious, like, I'm sure you guys have dealt with just as many spot burning complaints or, old timers throwing their hands up about, oh, nobody used to know about this until onX Fish came along. Have you guys seen much of that? Is it more than you saw on the trout route side of things? I'm a little curious.
Man, that's actually a really interesting question. It's one of the things I talk about with even just friends all the time who are anglers, and have questions about some of the differences. And I think when you think about the difference in the demographic of the angler that we're targeting,
Hmm.
the angler who is a conventional lake angler, no matter what age they're already in tune with using electronics and things like that for fishing, right? So we've honestly
Totally.
seen a lot less of that pushback, I would say, on the onX Fish side, just because that people are already used to, whether it's your forward-facing sonar or just your basic fish
Sure.
finder, or your navigation tools that you're already using. Those
Hmm.
conventional lake anglers are already a lot more accepting and in tune with using electronics side by side with their angling kind of adventures. So we've
Sure.
seen a
Yeah.
lot
Less of a
less pushback,
purist.
actually. Yeah.
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 Dude, I would not have thought about that. I would have thought there'd be enough people out there who are shaking their fist a little bit and getting frustrated that all of a sudden but like, I don't know, dude, like the Northwoods, most of the big target lakes that are the destination lakes that people want to come up to are already big enough and destination-y enough that they're like onX Fish isn't gonna it's gonna give them more data on that for sure, but it's not doing anything for like spots or which bay to go to or where this little bar is or anything like that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there is some of that data. So we do
mhm,
have so it's our fishing hotspots data. So it's actually coming from, if people are familiar with the fishing hotspots booklets that you could get
yeah,
in your tackle
yep,
shop, specifically for Minnesota, Wisconsin. We have ingested that data and built it into the app. So there is some of that data that helps anglers dial in some of those regions on those better known lakes. We don't have some of that detailed information for those smaller lakes, but for those better known lakes where that information is already widely available in those booklets in your tackle shop, we've just been able to build that into the app. And so all of that same information on different areas and different species that you can target in those different areas on some of those larger lakes is actually built into the app, which can be really useful. But on those smaller lakes, you still have to go out and explore and do a little bit of that digging yourself. So we have, heard a little bit about people that are like, oh man, my favorite trophy lake is now on the app and you can find it. And it's one of the things that we tell people on the trout route side as well. We're not showing you where people are catching fish specifically,
mhm,
and we're not necessarily able to get out there and fish for you in the boat, right? You still have to go do it yourself. So we can get you on the water, be able to help you be a little bit more prepared when you get there and feel more confident as an angler when you're approaching a new lake. But from there, you got to do it yourself.
yep, absolutely, yeah. Strap up your forward-facing sonar and get to work. That's
There we go, right? Hey, that's a whole nother conversation, man. We could do a whole nother hour just on that one.
No, man, that's super cool, and you're absolutely right. Like, it's not like I remember in high school using the app like Fishity, where it was like all user generated, like people like dropping pins, like, oh, here's where I caught this and here's where I caught that. And I don't know, even that. And then like Lake Link, like obviously wasn't dropping pins, but there was so much information on what fish were doing and everything depending on
Yeah.
what body of water you were on. I For whatever reason, it just never jived with me. I never enjoyed going on the Lake Link and like trying to see what other people were doing. And all that part was like I didn't know what the hell they were doing when they like were talking about all these different rigs and stuff at the time. But like nowadays, I part of it's just from the hunting side too, and using onX Hunt so much. Like just the process and having a plan of like, okay, if I'm going to look at this property, here's what I'm looking for with access. Here's what I'm looking for in terrain features. Here's what I'm looking for in, different types of habitat, all that sort of stuff. Like it's so intuitive to do the same exact thing in onX Fish that I think for folks who are in that headspace already, it's the perfect tool for getting out on the lake when you're not going into the woods.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not only built on the same platform, so people are going to be familiar with all of the different layers and the ability to have your satellite view, or we've got a mixed view where you'll be able to get some of the basic contours that we do have on lakes and things like that. But yeah, man, I mean, being able to, like you said, find those access points, things like that is super intuitive. We've got the same public lands data. I mean, we've got one of our ambassadors who I still think back to it. I believe it was last spring, right around ice out, he had a story about exploring a new lake, and he was able to find some of that sneaky public access to a lake that he assumed was going to be fairly untouched. And he got to the access road, and man, the pictures of his truck afterwards and the videos of him having to buff out all of the scratches on the truck, I was like, "Was it worth it?" And he was like, "It was worth it. It was absolutely worth it." So yeah, the ability to find some of those sneaky access points, you might scratch up the side of the truck a little bit, have to spend some time buffing it out, but you can find a lake that might be untouched and have quite the special day on it. Through the use of that. And it's very much, what type of angler are you? Are you the type of
Hmm.
angler who wants to go out with assured success? Those might be the type of anglers who are leaning towards some of those other apps. Whereas onX from the ground up has always been built for anglers who are just explorers who are really trying to have their own adventure, get kind of outside of the box, and start to tap into all of that public land and public land access that we have here and are fortunate enough to have here in the States. So um, it's super cool to be able to be a part of that and help be able to bring that to anglers, specifically through onX Fish.
Dude, definitely. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm obviously biased as I think a lot of our listeners are, and I'm sure you are as well. Like that little exploration factor of like, dang, I didn't know I could get back there. Like, I bet there's something cool back in that weird lake that's 3 miles deep on a logging road that I'm probably going to need to bring the chainsaw with to clear stuff out to get to. Or maybe we'll get stuck, maybe we won't. But like, only one way to find out, right? Like that
And maybe you're
aspect of it
wrong, and
is,
maybe you're
yeah,
right. And when you're right, it's just that much sweeter. It's
totally,
that much sweeter when you are right. So, heck yeah.
totally. Dude, talk to me a little bit about the data gathering process. You mentioned that it looked a little differently from state to state, as different states have different management styles, different priorities, I'm sure, when it comes to gathering their data. You mentioned Michigan's more like stocking focused, which is like a dirty word to some people, but but man, what's the data gathering process look like, and like what have you learned through that?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's been really cool, through the relationships that onX, through all of the verticals, whether it be hunt, backcountry, off road, had already built with all of these state agencies.
Hmm.
It's been really cool to be able to see the willingness that many of these states have had in terms of working with the fish team to be able to provide as much historic fisheries data as they've been able to. Again, depending on what state it is, Minnesota is the creme de la creme when it comes to fisheries data. I don't think that's going to surprise too many people. Wisconsin, not far behind. But when it comes to some of these other Midwest states, even, they do things very differently. And like you said, priorities are different. Specifically in Michigan, when we grew to Michigan, we built the app out in the same way that we had built it out for Minnesota and Wisconsin, and we realized that the data set simply didn't have the same richness when we were relying on the survey data like we relied solely on for Minnesota and Wisconsin. And so the team really took a look and dove in and was like, how can we make this data set richer and provide more value to Michigan anglers? And we found that building in that stocking data, which the state of Michigan puts a lot more time into documenting and making that data accessible, was a way for us to build in a brand new filter actually into those premium filters that was previously high abundance, trophy potential, and keeper potential. We added that fourth one being high stocking effort, which helped those Michigan anglers find more value in the app, find those lakes that they could understand had more potential than others simply based on the stocking efforts that their state was putting into it. So that was one of those specific examples. And it's actually been one of those things where as we've grown state by state, it's really been as we've been able to um, find those relationships with those states and be able to get access to that data. Some of the states that we ran into in 2025, we they were redoing their database, or they had 1 year, and in 2026 they were going to be able to provide us with 10 years of data. And so it was like, all right, let's make sure we're doing this properly and making sure we're providing the most value to the anglers in these states and launching each state properly, with the most data that we can, to like I said, give anglers the best chance when they're getting on the water and know that they've got the most valuable data in their hands.
Yeah, definitely, dude. One of the things you touched on there, those premium filters for you kind of mentioned earlier as well, but like filtering for which lakes have high abundance versus more trophy potential, or maybe there's overlap and there's both, and being able to filter for a lake that has a lot of fish and a lot of big ones, and analyzing the data, whether it be from surveys or stocking data and stuff through there, man, like that has been one of the coolest parts of the app for me, at least from a e-scouting standpoint, dude. And like again, you don't have to like people might throw their hands up and say like there's too much data out there. There's so much information on that. There's so much yada yada yada, whatever it might be. But when you look back at that data and like, yo, it's trophy potential, but it was last surveyed in 2018 or something like that for whatever example. It's like, okay, like let's do a little thinking here and like what's probably happened since then. It looks like there was a
Mm-hmm.
huge population of 12 to 14-inch fish or whatever it was 6 years ago, or oh my God, that's 8 years ago now. Holy crap. That's but
Time's
geez,
flying,
okay.
man.
Yeah. But yeah, like, that's you think over time, those fish, like most of our freshwater species, like I mean, smallmouth or slow growing fish, muskie or very slow growing fish, both of those fish tend to get pretty dang old. Like there's a good chance that down the road here, this time now we've got some probably a lot of really big fish. Who knows? So like playing that game, maybe I said too much there, but I don't know. That's been
No, you're exactly right though, man. I mean, that's the thing that we want to be able to encourage anglers to do with this data is, it's a similar thing to what Trout Routes does, right? Is it takes a lot of data. Instead of having 10, 12 different tabs open when you're trying to plan a trip, it's harnessing all of that data into one thing where you can, I get yelled at all the time by my wife sitting on the couch, scrolling through, filtering for, what smallmouth lakes am I going to fish this spring now that we've got the year round season here in Minnesota.
Mhm.
Catch and release here is this new early catch and release season is going to be a whole lot of fun. And I mean, I think that's one of the things we've really been pushing people to do is start to understand some of those high, like trophy potential lakes, and understand that data and dive in yourself and really start to peel through, and it also makes yourself a more informed angler, right? And I think that's one of the
Totally.
things that onX Fish strives to do is just make you a more informed angler on new lakes or even on the fisheries that you think you already know a whole lot about. It's just a way to be able to learn more about that, confirm theories, things like that. But yeah, man, those premium filters, I think that's one of the places that I personally recommend everybody starts when they get into the app, because most people have their target species, right?
Mhm.
Some people are super into their walleye. Some people are just bass anglers. Some people are like, man, give me panfish. I just want to have some fun. Or you're with the family and you just want to have fun with panfish, whatever that case might be. But most people have their target species that they want to tackle, or target two species, like you said, maybe target some trophy bass, but make sure you've got keeper potential bluegill there to be able to have a fish fry later with the family, or things. And those premium filters is going to be that first place, because the first thing that you get prompted with is going to be fish species. You can select what species you want to tackle, and then you get into those filters of kind of understanding. Do I want to target big ones? Do I want to just have a fun day and target and just crank on fish? Do I want to bring them home to the family, or do I want to understand if they have high stocking effort, and just understand if there's another way to be able to understand if there's a high abundance of fish in those lakes in those states that have that stocking data. So yeah, man, those premium filters, and that first button right there, the white button at the top of the screen where it says species, that's kind of the first place I tell people to go, because it really harnesses all of that data. One of the things I will say though is, for people who are familiar with some of the onX tools already, they're familiar with, and you're probably familiar with, the public land layers, the shading and the blocks of land, understanding access based on the icons, things like that.
Hmm.
But tapping on things specifically within the Hunt app isn't as intuitive. And so when people come from the Hunt app into the Fish app, one of the things we do have to make sure they do is tap on those lakes. You can see the lake, you can see the name of the lake, but tap on that lake, because that brings up what we call the lake card. And that's again where you're going to be able to see a lot of that species data for those specific lakes harnessed, as well as lake depth, things like that. You'll be able to pull in the weather geo specific to those lakes, specifically, useful if you're exploring outside of your region and want to know what the weather might be like uh, 200 miles north of you, or whatever it is. But clicking and actually interacting with some of those different icons within the Fish app isn't always as intuitive to people. So outside of making sure people dive into those premium filters, just start tapping on lakes. There's so much data harnessed in each of those lake cards, that that's also a great place to start as well.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick sec to tell you about Lone Wolf Custom Gear. Lone Wolf Custom Gear is as good as it gets when it comes to mobile hunting equipment. Whether you're a saddle or stand guy, public land or private, Lone Wolf Custom Gear has a set of sticks, a stand, a camera arm, and any number of accessories to get you closer to your target buck. To make it even better, everything is 100% USA sourced and made right here in the Midwest, and it's even assembled right across the river in Iowa by hunters who love chasing deer just as much as you do. To build your kit today, go visit lonewolfcustomgear.com. Now, let's get back to the episode. Totally, dude. Yeah, you can go down freaking rabbit holes. Like the chain that we're going to be on is like a chain of 4 different lakes. And so it's like clicking on the main lake and then also looking at the little weird channels and stuff that feed into the other 3 lakes. It's like just licking my chops looking at some of that stuff. And like also just rad to be able to find that much data and feel like you're, at least for me, going in, like I nerd out on like the trout stream surveys a lot and stuff, like partially for guiding, partially just because I find it interesting. But like being able to interpret that data and then also apply that to other lakes and stuff, like outside of just a simple trout stream or whatever, be able to key in on which lakes are like, oh, interesting. Like it looks like even some of the spots, shoot, like you click on some of them and like the species data will even show like, oh yeah, they're more in this lake in the springtime, and then by summertime or fall, they kind of like filter back down, like which that for me at least gives me a confidence factor going into this trip that I at least have a game plan and I have some historical data to work off of and some
Yep.
information to have in my back pocket, which is more than the rest of the guys in the trip have. So we'll see how our boat
There we
does.
go.
But but yeah, that's super cool. And one of the things you mentioned earlier was like the expert guide input or the hotspots and stuff. How did the gathering of that go? Is that just like through a partnership with Fishing Hotspots, or was it okay, gotcha.
Yep, yep. So yeah, it was just through a partnership that was formed by the early team. The fish product was, there was a long period of time, a long period of research that happened. I mean, I actually, it's funny. I remember looking back on it now, we laugh, but I remember we were at the Denver fly fishing show one year with trout routes. We had a booth in the far back corner. We were all standing at the booth one day, and we very slowly watched a guy with an onX hat and an onX sweatshirt on kind of walk by and was clearly like doing some preliminary, just looking. And he's now actually the product manager that I work with on the fish team. And so we laugh about it, but that was a long time before that the fish product ever came to market. And so fish has had a long incubation period and been able to build a lot of really great relationships. And that fishing hotspots data and being able to obtain that data was one of those first things that we really kind of um, felt set us apart and kind of gave us a leg up in terms of building deeper data sets outside of just species data into the app, which is something that we're going to be able to continue to do here in 2026 with a really exciting data set that, I can't say too much about right now, but another data set that's going to come to the app that we think is also going to be able to just set us apart a little bit from some of the other apps that people might already have in their pocket. So.
Hell yeah, dude, that's sick. I might have to. I might ask you about that stuff once we stop recording here. Just out of curiosity. I don't know.
Pure
um,
curiosity.
exactly. So you mentioned a lot of the other data comes from, like, I'm sure, like the bathymetry layers and like the information on what the bottom structure looks like and all that. Is that all coming from state fishing game agencies, or is that all, yeah, DNR stuff?
Yeah, so up to this point, all of the contour and lake bottom data that we've gotten built into the app is coming from the states. That is also one of the things in 2026 that we're attacking. We're actually within the next couple months here going to be building in and putting in a ton of richer contour data sets. We're not going to have HD contours necessarily for all of the lakes in the region, which is one of the things we pitch fish being a planning tool, right? It's not necessarily your on the water navigation tool for open water. I will say it's a great navigation tool during the ice season, right? With the tracking feature, you've got that recent satellite imagery to be able to see the ice formation or ice roads, even on some of those larger lakes, but not necessarily pitched as a navigation feature, really that planning feature. But those contour sets that we are able to bring into the app are just going to be able to make it easier for people to plan, some of those, points or things like that in lakes that they might want to attack and, you know, drop waypoints on ahead of time as they're planning and scouting out those trips.
Totally. So when you say more high res, like bottom stuff, like my mind immediately jumps. I'm picturing LiDAR layer on the topo map on onX. Are we moving in that direction potentially inside the lake? Okay,
Slowly but
got it.
surely. That's an effort that we're making a real jump towards. So
That's
I'll say
badass.
that much about it.
That's filthy. That's super cool, dude. Um, So walk me through a little bit. You mentioned, starting with the filters layer and stuff, but walk me through a little bit of like what an e-scouting process looks like for you and how you are actively using the app over the course of a year.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we can talk a little bit about ice season first. I know we're
Mhm.
coming out of it, but here in the Midwest, quickly approaches again.
Yeah.
Cycles feel like they
Yeah.
go real fast.
We still got March ahead of us. Who knows what's going to happen?
Ain't that the truth? And especially like we mentioned, if you're far enough north, you still got 2.5, 2 feet of ice yet. So
Hmm.
there's still got a bit of time. But I think when it came to planning out some of those ice fishing trips this year, like I mentioned, the recent satellite imagery was outside of just that species data and dialing in, like, all right, do we want to target bluegill? Do we want to target perch? Are we looking to target walleye? What do we want to go do? Are we looking to keep them? Are we looking to catch bigs? That was absolutely the place I started. But one of the other tools I really found myself using was that recent satellite imagery. Like I mentioned, you were able to find with those 2 week increments of that imagery drop, you're able to find those kind of lakes that might ice up quicker than others, to be able to get on some of those early ice lakes faster than other people. Some might be unpressured while you're getting on them. But also, as the season's gone on, being able to find not only those ice roads to be able to kind of have a plan of how you're going to get out to an area on a lake ahead of time, but also just understanding like, all right, where is everybody currently setting up, especially on some of those larger lakes where people set up their shacks for the entire length of the season. And you can get an idea like, all right, where is pressure already being put on this lake? And where can I maybe break away from that pressure using the recent satellite imagery? So I found myself using that a ton. And then every time, outside of rolling down the windows, unbuckling the seatbelt, I threw on tracker every time before driving out onto the ice, just to make sure whether it got dark or whether, there was snow that blew across roads or things like that, that I knew exactly what my path out to where I was had been
Totally.
so that I could follow that right back out, make sure you're staying safe and, not getting into any sticky situations like
Yeah,
you
no
mentioned,
kidding.
some people down south have found themselves in lately.
Yeah, dude, I hadn't even thought about the safety feature of it like that. That's super smart. Just being able to
Yeah,
track
man.
your
Yeah,
entry
of
and
course,
exit
it's
route
nice to be
and
able to,
yeah.
like, track where you went to be able to look back and be like, "All right,
Mhm.
what section of this lake have I already covered?" But the safety factor specifically, during ice is pretty unbeatable, so
Yeah, definitely. How about on the open water side of things?
yeah, I mean, when it comes to open water, we'll dive into like I mentioned, I'm specifically excited about this spring bass season.
Mhm.
Um, so diving species, selecting those largemouth and smallmouth species layers, and then immediately diving into, all right, what are some of the trophy lakes that I can access? Those are immediately going to pop up orange on the map instead of that blue lake icon that you'll typically see. And from there, like you mentioned, I've been pouring through that species data and trying to understand some of those classes of fish. And then, as I mentioned before, I've got a beater truck. I'm willing to get that thing scratched up. So I'm trying to find some of those sneaky access points, like our ambassador Ryan Pincala on the Crappie Chronicles team. For those who might be familiar, they've got some of those sneaky access points down. I'm like, all right, I need to play that game. I need to get this truck scratched up a little bit. Maybe give myself a reason to buy a new one next year or something like that. But I've told myself that not only for spring smallmouth, but also trout. I mean, I did it just this past weekend when we had that fall spring lately here, and I've told myself this is the year of exploration. I'm not going to go back to the same old haunts that I did in 2025. So, really been focusing on finding those new sneaky access points, smaller lakes. Like I mentioned, I'm typically a short angler. The kayak scene is coming into play here. So I'm excited to dive into that this year. But looking at some of those smaller lakes too, that I might be able to break away from not only the boat pressure, but also just like general pressure. Um, uh, you know, there's a lot of fisheries data within the app, and being able to um, break away from pressure is one of the things that I'll definitely be looking forward to this summer as we dive into the season. Fairly quick, man. I mean, like you said, these couple of inches of snow when I was shoveling, I was like, I was pretty ready for this all to be over. I'm pretty ready for open water to come around. I feel
Mhm.
like I cosplay as an ice angler during the ice season. I try to convince myself that I enjoy it, I think, a little bit or something like that. So I'm ready. I'm ready for open water to come back around, man. So counting
Totally.
down the days.
Hell yeah, dude. I like it. Without divulging too much, what's your strategy look like for like avoiding pressure? Are you just looking for those more potentially overlooked stuff, something that might be unnamed or something just tucked back in some national forest land that
Yeah, I
who
mean, I
knows
think,
how?
the first thing that I've been looking at is trying to find lakes that don't have specific access points on them. So those are going to be the big green icons. They'll have the boat ramp. They'll have multiple different access icons on them, and looking at lakes that specifically don't have designated access points and trying to understand if there's easement land on them, if there's state land on them, whatever it might be, to find some of those, whether it be a logging road or things like that, that you can find some of that sneaky access on. I think that's the first way that I've definitely been able to start doing it, as well as I think one of the other things there's there's a variety of year classes, like you mentioned, of data. And so finding some of those lakes that maybe don't have the most up to date data that people aren't necessarily looking for and looking towards. Um, I'm not afraid to get skunked this year exploring. I feel like that's one of the things that comes from it, right? So I'm
Hmm.
going to go out and explore some lakes that maybe haven't been surveyed in a long time and try to figure out what's going on with them. I think that's one way that I'll try to break away from some pressure too, is exploring those lakes that people maybe aren't specifically targeting just because that they're questionable in terms of recent survey data. So
Yeah, definitely, dude. I love that approach. And yeah, that was what was going through my mind as you were talking about like the year of exploration and not being afraid of getting skunked and just wanting to check out all those new spots. Like I've been doing the same thing this winter so far on all of our trout streams, and it puts you in such a better headspace, I feel like, than going back to the same spot and fishing it the same way. Because no matter what we do, like we all know, like, well, I've figured out that the best spot to cast from is right here. The best, this hole holds the best fish or the highest number. Like this is how you fish this spot. And almost like it's less engaging, for lack of a better term, I feel like, because you're not actively thinking about like, okay, here's a weird puzzle. Like, how would I approach that? How I've got okay, wind's working this way. I've got this overhang and this deadfall. Like, how might we sneak a cast up in there? I don't know. And dude,
yeah,
it's
it
the
feels like
best.
it gets you away from the thing that most of us are looking for when we're getting out is that challenge of figuring out a problem and when you get the solution it's that much more rewarding like I mentioned earlier. I
Totally.
mean and I just experienced that on a trout stream here myself. I mean with this spring warm up I was like all right I got to get out and at least explore a little bit of trout here and explored a trout stream further north than I have in a long time and ended up having an awesome morning and the dry fly action was crazy. I shook hands with more brook trout than I have in a couple of years. It feels like so. It's awesome to be able to get out and explore. And I think the entire onX Maps system is built to do that.
Dude, definitely. Plus, like when you commit to a program like that of like exploration, it's like every fish you catch is that much sweeter. Or every little, even if you're just on public land and you find that crazy rub line that you didn't know existed, and it's like, oh, this is gnarly. Like nobody else knew about this. I mean, maybe people knew about it, but like, I don't know. It's that much sweeter than it is going back to the same old haunt and you're like, well, this didn't perform like it did that one day, or like kind of. I
Yep.
think we all lean back into that like historical data, historical knowledge, and in a negative way in that regard, but going to the same spots and that's the delicate balance of I feel like what a lot of Midwestern outdoorsmen, deal with though, right? Is that balance of tradition and going back to the same spots and, living on memories a little bit versus the need to explore, but I don't know, dude. I'm right there with you in explore mode, and yeah, like you said, especially if you can find I'm so jealous that you guys are that far north that you have higher densities of brook trout, like, that's one thing that's just getting fewer and fewer further between, I guess, down here that sad to see, but, when you find them, dude, it is sweet, especially when you don't expect to.
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like the last couple of years, the places that I usually would find them, it's just more and more brown trout, and they're
Mhm.
fun. But it is one of those things when you do find a little gem. It's like, all right, I'm gonna hold this one close to the chest, and because they are getting special for sure.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, dude, we've kinda talked about it a little bit on the smallmouth bass front, so I have an idea of where this is going for you here, but before we wrap up, man, you get 1 day to fish in 2026. What area are you going to? Or like what region, I guess, are you going to? What time of year? What are you fishing for? And what style of fishing are you pursuing these things with?
Oh, oh man. All right. It's gonna be getting out with buddies, whether it's on a buddy's boat or renting a boat. It's gonna be northern Minnesota. That kind of. I mean, I would have said May, June, but now maybe it'll be earlier. My answer might change. Would be that early season for smallmouth, of course. Um, Having a fly rod in the boat in case we get some shots, but man, I think the bait of the year specifically, and the bait that I would have to grab would be New Z-Man llama tubes. Oh man, that
Hmm.
was smallmouth candy for me. So I think targeting that early season smallmouth bite with llama tubes on a spinning rod on a northern Minnesota lake. I think that's, and that answer has changed. I mean, even just in the last couple of years, I feel like I go in waves of whether I want to be standing in a river for smallmouth or whether I want to be up on a lake for smallmouth. But you're not wrong that the answer was inevitably going to be smallmouth for sure. Whether
Yeah.
it's on a fly rod, on a spinning rod, I can't get enough of them, man.
No, dude, they're such special fish. And yeah, especially I have yet to make it to northern Minnesota. I've seen the pictures. My girlfriend actually used to work for a company that was headquartered in like Nisswa. And so I thought there was a chance that like for one of her, she works remote. So I was like, oh, well, next company on site you have to go up for, like, it would suck to have to go up and, I'll take care of the dog. Don't worry about that. Like, we'll just go out on the boat. We'll do our thing. And whenever you're done with work, we can meet up for dinner. That'll be fine. But, but alas, doesn't look like that's in the cards for this year. So, oh well.
Well,
But
we'll get you up here sometime, man, and we'll get out together because it's certainly something special, and there's a hard time of year to go wrong up here when it comes to the
right.
open water season. It's hard to beat it.
Yeah, definitely, dude. Well, man, you mentioned that there's a couple things on the docket for new features, new releases. We've kind of teased a couple of them, but what's coming on the pipe here at onX Fish this year?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's one of the exciting things about the fish product is that we are still in absolute like growth mode when it comes
Totally.
to adding new states. We've got it, like I mentioned earlier, a couple new states coming out here fairly soon. We're going to fill out that Midwest region, figure out where we're going next. But outside of just growing new states, we're adding new features, we're adding new data sets. One of the things that I'm really excited about, and it's already available in the app, we are going to be adding a button within the layers feature to make it much more obvious, but is that two pan swipe to be able to view lake bottoms in that 3D mode. That's one of the things I'm really excited about specifically for open water to explore some of those humps and things like that within lakes, understand the structure a little bit better. So super excited to be able to bring that app to the users and to market here. But we're also going to be, like I mentioned, building in all of that new species data for each state. Thousands of new lake contours are going to be coming to the app. Um, Android, it's one thing we haven't touched on, but we are currently only available on the web or on iOS. Android is getting its day here very soon. We're excited to be able to have that for Android users come open water season. It's probably one of our most frequently asked questions is when are you going to be available on Android? So that's coming soon. We're super excited about that.
Thank God,
And then we've
man. I
got
was
yeah. Are you an Android user? Have we been disappointing you the whole time?
I am. Yep,
Oh
yep.
man. All
I'm
right.
a
Well,
I'm a
we're coming.
degenerate.
We're coming.
It's hell yeah. Hell yeah. I
uh,
love it, dude.
and then one of the cool data sets that I can talk a little bit about that we're excited to build in is, if you're familiar again with those layers. Right now we've got a precipitation layer, so you can see precip right on the map. Um, But one of the things that we are going to be building in here is going to be wind on maps. So you'll be able to see that wind data. Right now, you can add it to waypoints, but you'll be able to see that wind data right on the map. Be able to understand, some of those bigger lakes. The wind is blowing. They might be a little bit out of question for that day. You can then dial in that area around it and find some of those smaller lakes that aren't going to necessarily be as affected by high wind. Things like that is, just a couple ways that people will be able to use that new feature that we're super excited to bring as well this summer.
Dude, that's sick. Is that gonna look similar to like the wind direction feature on the Hunt app? Or is it
Yep,
okay, gotcha.
yep,
Rad.
yep. Fairly
Got it.
similar. So
Got it. That's sick, man. Well, dude, that is extremely exciting. And I'm curious too. We've talked about trout routes with Eric. We've talked about fish with you. We started this conversation talking about smallmouth rivers and some of the warm water rivers. Is there any game plan to maybe start looking that direction and filling in the gaps on the warm water front there?
I think it's going to be a natural step, right? I mean, we've got. Uh, Trout Routes just within the last couple of weeks here launched species data for oh boy, I don't want to get it wrong. Also, I'll say a number of Western states now have the ability to filter for rivers by species, as well as all of that species data is harnessed in the stream card that Trout Routes users are familiar with. And so, while building out that data set, uh, we are able to have access to warm water species data sets as well. So I think it's going to be eventually a natural step to where that the apps find themselves somewhere in the middle of being able to cover, your river angler as well as your lake angler. And I think the future is exciting for both products right now, no matter which direction Trout Routes go specifically on covering just cold water streams versus both. The future is exciting for both, especially with that species data coming to Trout Routes and all of these new features that we've got coming to fish. Again, specifically helping out your lake anglers or your moving water anglers.
That's super cool, dude. Like, I mean, what a time to be at the onX. Yeah, I guess most of you guys work remote, don't you? Or at least a lot of you guys do. You guys are kind of all over the place. But like, dude, what a time to be just a part of that team and just be, I don't know, on the growth train with all of that stuff. And like super cool being able to go from trout routes to the onX fish and kind of keep working that almost like entrepreneurial, like launch muscle a little bit and kind of stay in that headspace, dude. Like that's got to be so freaking cool to be a part of and just see all that stuff grow and all that, man. It's exciting.
Oh, yeah, man, very cool. I mean, Hunt and the other verticals certainly paved the way, and
Hmm.
um, Trout Routes was very much modeled after the onX system, and so that was why it was a natural fit for us to be ingested there. And um, but yeah, man, I mean, onX just as a company has been very cool to be a part of because, as I mentioned, all of those other verticals they've gone through a lot of these tribulations and things that we are finding ourselves in on the trout routes and fish side. And so there's so many knowledgeable people that you can tap into. And I mean, even just outside of that, the amount of people who do some incredible Western hunting, or they live on in the eastern side of the states and do some really exciting like saltwater fishing that I don't get the access to, whatever it might be. Yeah, it's a super cool company to work for, both on the work and the personal side as well. I mean, it's if you're a fan of the outdoors, it's hard to beat. I think it's on everybody's top list. So.
Yeah, definitely, dude. That's super cool. Well, man, before we wrap this one up here, I kind of gave you the one day to fish in 2026 question there, but what do you have lined up for this upcoming year? Any big trips on the docket or anything?
Oh man, we so my wife and I just got married last year and we're in
Awesome.
that phase of things where it's just back to back to back weddings. And so, we've I've got a lot of weddings that I'm trying to plan around, but I've got a couple buddies who've got bachelor trips who we're going to try to sneak some fishing in. But
Nice.
man, I think a lot of it's going to be wrapping up work days when we get enough later in the daylight. I mean, that's one of the things I struggle with right now is I get done with work and I got maybe an hour of light left to do something. But when we get into those summer months, it'll be really focused on, all right, work's done, hopping on the bike, popping over to the Mississippi and just spending a lot of time there exploring that and trying to get that dialed in. But I think that'll be what the year will be mainly filled with. I don't think it'll be too many massive fishing trips. I did just get back from the Bahamas, and that was a great time. I probably should have dedicated some time to maybe finding a guide for bone fishing. I tried the DIY
Yeah.
side of things and got my butt handed to me. But I did see a big manta ray just cruising right along, and got to see a lot of things that you don't get to see here in the Midwest. So we'll soak it up and we'll take it as a learning experience for next time.
Dude, absolutely. If anything, just learn the lesson that the DIY side of things is tough to do, right? And I was
Yeah,
I was gonna
right.
ask,
Yeah.
like, is it as hard as people say? Like, and everybody said yes so far. So
Yeah, man. I mean, it's tough. It definitely is. Especially, you got to be in the right spot as well. That was me tacking on some fishing to my wife's work trip, which I know
sure.
you were just mentioning like we tack on something to a work trip, but that was absolutely where she was like, "Hey, I'm going to the Bahamas for work. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Sign me up." The fly rod will be in my bag, absolutely. So, but I did come out of that saying, all right, maybe I do need some more dedicated fishing trips, or I'm not just trying to tack it on as an additional thing. I feel
Hmm.
like I do that too often. So I already texted a buddy, and we're planning out 2027 trips. So
Nice.
2026, I don't think is going to be the year of dedicated fishing trips. To 2027, 2026 year of exploration. 2027 year of dedicated fishing trips elsewhere. That's what I'm
For
already
sure.
setting it up. So
Dude, I love that. That's an awesome lineup to have on the calendar there, man. I love that approach. And yeah, I'm right there with you. You got that stage of life now where everybody's getting married and it's either bachelor trips or weddings to go to on the weekends. It's like, when am I supposed to fish? Like, what?
right,
Do
it's
people
fun.
not
Like, don't get
think
me
of
wrong,
this
it's
when you
fun. I'm happy for my friends. Like, congratulations. But man, you get a wedding invite, and it's on Michigan deer opener, and it's like, oh, wow, well, oh, it just hurts a little bit. It
Yeah,
hurts. It
yeah.
hurts.
I think I'm sick that day. I don't know. That's Did you guys not think of that? Like, why can't you all get married in January through March and give us the like you can have July, sure, whatever. But yeah, aside from that, like just be thoughtful when you're getting married, people. Come on. Like
Yeah, I say that, and I got married at the end of September, so I really shouldn't talk. I shouldn't talk at all.
well, that's still early enough. You're not quite into prime time unless you're a Western guy. But
Right,
no,
right.
that's a good one. Well, dude, man, this has been awesome. I have thoroughly enjoyed this as I have just kicking around the onX Fish app. I am super fired up for this year ahead of exploration and seeing what you can get into. But before we wrap this one up, man, where can folks go to learn more about onX Fish and also follow along with you and your exploration this year?
Yeah, man. So first, onX Fish, onxfish.com. We've got the onX Maps parent page that it's also hosted under, or right now in the iOS App Store, soon coming to Android and the Play Store. But we've got free trials, so people can jump into the app, explore before that they commit to any subscription. We send out a lot of really exciting emails as well. So once you're in, you'll be able to get some of those fishing tips outside of just app tips. And then personally, I'm not as active posting, but I will say I'm active on the story side of things on Instagram. Matthew Mendini will be that. Generally posting more of my photography on that side of things. But the fishing action definitely makes it into the stories. So would love to have people follow along, man. It'll be a fun
Sweet,
year.
dude. Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. I'm chomping at the bit for the snow to disappear so we can actually get out there and start beating on some fish. But, dude, this has been awesome, man. I seriously, I can't thank you enough for taking time to come on the show and also for just everything that onX does, just on the partnership front with the show and whatnot on both hunt and we're not. I think well, we're running fish ads as well. So, yeah, dude, just everything that you guys are doing as a partner, man does not go unnoticed or underappreciated. So I appreciate you guys, and man, good luck this spring, and hopefully we can we'll maybe drag Eric out of his little hidey hole and get into some fish together.
There we go. I think the three of us need to find ourselves on some water here fairly soon.
Definitely, yeah, definitely, dude. We'll have to make that happen. But sweet
Cool.
man, enjoy your weekend, and thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, Pierce, for having me.